So while our stock syrup is reducing, then we could start to make our shortbread biscuits. Now I'll just talk you through the ingredients again. I know we showed a little picture of them before, but we've got 150 grams of flour, we've got 100 grams of butter and 50 grams of sugar. And pretty simply, all we're going to do is pop all those ingredients together and fold them in together. Okay, so it takes a little bit of work with our fingers, and all we're doing is breaking the butter up into pieces with our fingers and just what we call rubbing it in. So we rub it with our fingers so the whole mixture comes together. So after some time of bringing all that mixture together, and you'll become very impatient, I'm certain, because it does take some time, your mixture should come together as a ball of dough. Okay, there's one or two bits left in the bowl there, they can be added to it as well. What you need to do is just push them in and they will join onto that ball of dough. Don't waste any, because although we only need to cook about 6 shortbread biscuits for presentation, we can always cook a few more, so we've got some spares, and they're always good to eat with a cup of tea as well. So we're just making sure all that ball comes together now, and as you can see, there's no cracks on the surface. It's all nice and neat. And last thing I'm going to do with that is just place it neatly on the surface, and then I'm going to cling film this and pop it in the fridge for about 10 minutes for it to rest. So before I roll out the shortbread biscuits, I just want to show you this stock syrup, which is now reduced by half, and it's become much thicker. As it reduces as well, it becomes sweeter, as I said, so it'll become more of a syrup really. So now that that's ready, I'll take it off the heat and just leave it to cool naturally just on the side of the bench here, so it still has a tiny bit of warmth left in it, but it's not chilled right down, so it's completely cold and unusable. So while my shortbread's been resting and the stock syrup's just been finishing off, I've just gathered some other pieces of equipment. So I've got a rolling pin for rolling out the shortbread, and I've got a tray with some greaseproof paper cut to the right size as well. I've also got a biscuit cutter as well, so we're going to cut it into rounds. If you want to use the fluted side, you can do. I just prefer the plain side. I've also got a little bit of flour as well, because what I don't want to happen is for the shortbread to stick to the bench. So I'm just going to put a little bit down on the surface of the bench, and then I'm going to put a little bit on the surface of the shortbread, and also a little bit on our rolling pin. And all I'm going to do is just roll this out really carefully. I'm just putting a tiny bit of weight on it, and I'm going to roll it out to the thickness of a pound coin. Okay, so you can see how I roll it and then I turn it the other way. I roll it and I turn it the other way, as I said, until I get it to the thickness of a pound coin. So we may need to put a little bit more flour on the surface, just a dusting, just to make sure the rolling pin isn't sticking. And I'll just finish off those ends just with the rolling pin at the end, just to show that I've got it to the right thickness. There's a pound coin, and it's probably just about that sort of thickness. So the next part is the cutting out. So really carefully, taking advantage of as much of the surface of the shortbread as I can. I'm going to cut out some biscuits, and as I said, we need about 6 for our presentation, but we can make some more. You can always take them home if for your parents, or you can eat them yourselves, whatever you fancy doing. So into nice little rounds, using as much of the pastry as we can do. So once we've cut them out, really carefully with a palette knife, we're going to move them over to our baking sheet, being really gentle with them because they will be quite fragile, and place them carefully on the baking. So once I've got my biscuits onto the tray, you can see there's lots of offcuts left. It won't get wasted. All we need to do is bring it back together as a ball of dough again, and then that bit there is ready to roll again to make some more biscuits if we need them. So as you can see, I've made some extra biscuits. I only need 6, don't forget. These are going to go into a preheated oven, about 180 degrees, something like that, and they're going to go in between 6, 8 and 10 minutes, dependent on the thickness of your biscuits, will depend on the cooking time, until they just start to go brown. So these have had about 8 minutes in the oven, and you can see they've just started to colour, but they've got not got lots and lots of colour on them. And at first they were a little bit soft to the touch, so it feels like they're not cooked, but believe me, they are. Okay, so at this point I'm going to sprinkle a little bit of sugar on them as well, just for a little bit of extra sweetness. And I've also gathered myself a cooling wire to my left hand side there. Okay, you're right. And be really careful because they're really quite hot. I'm going to lift them carefully onto the cooling wire so that the air can circulate underneath them to cool them down better. And I'm going to leave them on there until they are completely cold.